Thank you for joining us on another episode of Latter-Gay Stories podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Ashworth, and we are grateful to have you here for another episode. The Latter-Gay Stories podcast is your opportunity to better understand the intersection of sexuality and reality, where it meets at the streets of LDS Avenue and LGBTQ Street. It's the podcast episode just like this that helps to build bigger and stronger bridges between these two communities, the LDS community and the general community public in a whole. And we are grateful that you have given us an hour of your time to join us. Now, today's podcast episode is an interesting story about a person who attended BYU as a student, and because of a kiss, it started with a whisper, he was dismissed from the school, kicked out, and sent into the lone and dreary world. So today's podcast episode is his story, and it will be relatable to many of you, especially those who are participating in a church-owned school. The oddness, the intricacies, and the unique experience that it is attending a CES school, a church education system school within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So, without further ado, I want to welcome to the podcast Tommy Francesco.
That's right, with the ch.
Francesco.
Uh-huh.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and fantastic introduction. It sounds like a thesis. I mean, I was in graduate school not too long ago, so it sounds like a full a thesis paper. So, I love it.
What did I miss?
Well,
tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, see, that's like simultaneously my least and most favorite question. And so, because I don't always know where to begin, I feel like I've lived a bunch of different lives. I just turned 30, and I've lived in 10 different states, and since I've moved out of my house, and I was born in Fontana, California. I was kind of bounced back with divorced parents between Southern California and Las Vegas. And yeah, my childhood, it was split between my mother and my father. They both had struggles. They both had dependency issues with alcohol and drugs. And so as I got to the point where I made friends in 6th, 7th grade, I was making some friends in band. And my really good friend, Emily, so nice. Her father was the history teacher at my school, such a cool guy. And they invited me over for dinner. It found out that they were Mormon, and they seemed like a very happy family. And in comparison to I saw it as a total different dimension as far as a home environment goes. And I was very impressed by that, which is kind of how that started and probably transitions into my membership in the church.
Very impressed by just the stable family, impressed by the structure of the church, or impressed by the missionaries?
Didn't take much to impress me as far. I mean, I think so. Yes, the missionaries were kind and handsome, and I didn't really think I got a lot of attention. I'm the oldest boy. I have a younger brother in my family, and I didn't feel like I had a lot of positive male attention. And the missionaries were like double the amount wherever you went. And one of them went on to be playing for the NBA, I believe. And then the other one was some BYU who is now a seminary teacher. And I've been in contact with those missionaries who were part of my baptism. And the family, of course, that was there, Emily's family. Emily was my great friend. And so I found this belonging place in the church that I wanted and desired as a child. And of course, the church kept me busy as well. I was given callings, and I'm a organist and piano player, so I started to play and go to Boy Scouts and Mutual, and you turn 14, you go to seminary, and so we had early morning seminary, starting at 5, we had to leave at 5:45, 5:30 in the morning. It was an escape, and I guess at the time, I mean, like, spoiler, this is Latter Gay Stories. I'm gay. And I knew that. I've known that since I was 6, 7 years old, probably. But to me, the fact that the church was anti-gay was less harmful for me at the time than I felt, being at home was. And it really gave me opportunities to, I don't know if I would have been able to go to a specific college like BYU if I wasn't a member of the church either, or been able to afford something as nice as BYU Idaho.
At what age were you when you converted to the church?
13.
So 13 years old, and you just said that you knew that you were different, younger than that. When your missionaries were teaching you, did they talk about sexuality at all? I know that's one of the baptismal questions, but prior, like during the discussions, did they mention anything about sexuality?
No, but I noticed that the missionaries would like touch each other a lot, like in a way that wasn't gay, but that was a lot of like arm around. But in my mind, I was like, well, maybe that is gay, and maybe they're gay, but maybe they just don't tell anyone, or maybe I mean, looking back, I was so precious, because I just didn't really have a very broad vision of sexuality. As far as I knew, my siblings were heterosexual. My aunts and uncles are heterosexual. So I did ask the missionaries right before I was baptized in the dressing room. I said, so can guys get married in the temple to each other? And they're like, no. I'm like, oh, but what if they're like keeping the law of chastity and doing everything you're supposed to do? And they said that's something that we can address in a lesson at another time. And then I got baptized, and I don't know if we officially ever did bring it up. I don't remember, but that's all. I think because I was so young, and I'm small. Like I'm small now, but I was like so small at 13. I looked like an 8-year-old, It looks like what a lot of Mormons look like when they get baptized. And so maybe they just didn't want to talk about, maybe they're uncomfortable talking about gay and sexuality and masturbation and all of that.
Yeah, those are all taboo topics in the church.
Yeah.
We just don't spend very much time discussing them, unfortunately.
Yeah, but there was no disclaimer. There was no clear disclaimer for like, I've learned more about the church's stance on sexuality as I've gotten older, but I didn't know basically anything when I joined.
So you baptized at 13, and we're talking a part-member family, so you're the only member of your family that's been baptized. That had to bring with it its own difficulties. Where did you find community? You said the church kept you busy. Did you start forming a friend circle within the church? And how did those relationships begin to form?
Yeah, when I was in high school, I had a pretty, other than going to 5 different high schools, because just being tossed around a lot, I had a pretty normal high school experience. In some ways, it was like Glee, because I was very involved in theater and music, and that was one of my belonging places. And just in the high school that I went to, there were a lot of LDS people there. We had a seminary building like really close to campus. And my first real traumatic event with sexuality, that intersection of sexuality and the doctrine and the church and the policies, was when I was 17, and I did have sex with another high school student on a choir trip. And I went to go tell my bishop about it, and then it turned into my bishop called my bishop used the word faggotry, which I had never heard in a doctrinal context, but I got the theater teacher was LDS, and I got removed from the musical that I was in, which is so funny because as it unfolds in my experience at BYU Idaho, there's a mirror, there's a bookend to what happened. But yeah, I was actually expelled from school for having a sexual experience on a choir trip. Meanwhile, a lot of the straight kids, I think one of the girls actually got pregnant on that trip. So there was sex going on. We were 16, 17-year-old high school students being put up in a Marriott sharing beds together in Hawaii, and we're choir kids. So the fact that they're confused why, two boys that anything would happen, And so that was my first traumatic experience. Other than that, bishops had been pretty, I relied on them a lot. And this was the first bishop to really kind of shock me with, I felt personally attacked.
So not to define his word faggotry, which is unique, but what were the actions that he took? What did that word mean to him? So he knows that you had an experience with another boy. What did he end up doing?
Well, so I had met with the bishop quite a bit, and he knew that I had I hate calling them issues, but he knew that I would masturbate and look at porn, and that I would go to him for counseling. And he would check up on me, and he was preparing me to receive the office of priest in the Aaronic priesthood. And I've been working diligently and going to seminary and really being faithful. And then I go on this trip, and I come and I confess to him, and as if all of my work just went down the toilet. And what is this? How is this faggotry better than the priesthood of God? Was the point. And you're trading your soul, your duty, your privilege for being gay. And I believed that, and I was devastated, and I lost a lot of my support group then because I was kicked out of the show. So in high school, at a non-LDS even structure, but just because there were so many LDS people involved, it really became something that was the first huge heartbreak with the church.
And that's a twofold gut punch to have your social life, those aspects of your social life, especially within your school system and your choir friends, punish you, but then to have your religious community also somewhat abandon you in that. It's got to be tough. And you're 17. And
it's my senior year of school, and I missed my final musical, and I missed my final I missed graduation. I missed the choir concert at the end.
Do you think the religious nature of your teachers? You said some of them were LDS.
Yeah, all of them were.
That had something to do with
both the choir teacher and the theater teacher. And looking then, I was like, oh well, they're just being fair because that's what Jesus wants. Jesus would want me to be ostracized because you get punished when you sin. And now I'm thinking, I was fucking 17, and I experimented in a consensual and legal way as a minor, and for other people to get a slap on the wrist, or for other people to get something, it just seems discriminatory. It's discriminatory.
And a gut punch.
Yeah, and a punch in the gut, and And I'm sad I, didn't have necessarily the resources then to stick up for myself. Actually, my parents stuck up for me the most out of anybody. My mom was there and with the superintendent and saying, so you're telling me that he's being expelled because it was with a boy? And they basically said yes. And so my mom ended up pulling me out and putting me into an independent high school, and I finished high school like online, basically. Mm-hmm. No prom. So if you're single and you wanna recreate prom, we can do that. Just not joking.
But you're serious.
Didn't you go to prom?
Yes, of course.
Okay, well.
Except I went to prom.
Ask me if I went to prom. You know the answer. I didn't get to go to prom.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of.
I probably would have gone with a girl too.
All those experiences, 100% you missed out on them because of a ridiculous tradition. But you stuck with the church because you end up serving a mission.
Oh yeah.
How do we get from boy who gets kicked out of school for having sex with another boy, bishop knows about it, to the point where you're still in good standing? What changed in your life to get you to the point where you could pass the mission interview and be recommended by your bishop to serve a mission?
Well, if you were to ask me that question like 10 years ago, I would say that my faith in the Lord brought me through and kept me coming back to the church and eventually serving a mission. And now that I can reflect on it and I'm not in the middle of it, I realize that it was my fear of not being able to do it without the church, to do anything, let alone feel happy and at one with God, but I had no money and I had no consistent family support, and the church did not give me money. They didn't write me checks. I wrote them checks, but I was supported a lot by members of the church who would kind of take me under their wings. I always had ward families. Like families I know that you call wards families, but families in each ward that would take the young single, lost bird. And I needed that. I really did. And I, like I said, I couldn't have gotten out of my family situation, I don't think, unless it were for the scholarship that I received to go to BYU, Idaho. So I wanted to be good. I felt really grateful, even though I had this great kind of knot inside because I couldn't be gay.
And I think that's relatable to a lot of Latter-day Saints who are listening to this episode. I think the general membership are kind people who want to help out, who want to wrap their arms around those in need. I also know Mormonism to have this toxic culture of creating projects everywhere they go. Seeing someone and thinking, oh, he's the only member of his family, he must have it rough. You mentioned your parents were dependent on substance issues in your family. So easily they latch onto people that they think that they can fix or protect or create projects with. And so that had to have been an interesting experience for you.
Yeah.
So they support you financially as you prepare for your mission. What are your interviews like? Is this the same bishop that you had from high school or a different bishop?
Well, I didn't go on my mission until I was 23.
So different bishop.
Yeah. Yeah. After the experience in California, I worked for that year, was able to earn the ecclesiastical endorsement, prove that I wasn't acting out in my gay stuff, and then I went to BYU, Idaho, and was living in the student housing and going to church there, and very fresh-eyed. I'm ready to make everybody who's supported me proud. I'm ready to live faithfully to the gospel. I'm ready to be a BYU student and kill it. And that's how I went into school.
Eyes wide open.
Yeah. And I had a great first year, social first year at BYU. didn't really. I was running on the adrenaline of the new experience, living in a new state and knew everything. Being on my own was really nice, and by own I mean like crammed in a room this small with like 4 other BYU students, but away from home and away from all of that mess that happened in high school and before. So that's kind of the attitude that I went into.
Why did you choose BYU Idaho?
Well, I got into it. My ACT scores weren't good enough to go to BYU Provo, and I didn't even apply for BYU Hawaii. And I wanted to go to a church school because that's just what you were supposed to do. So I guess and I had some friends that recommended it and were going to be there too. So
it sounds like you put on the happy, smiley, I'm a Mormon face. What about your identity, your sexual identity? What face did you put on it?
I was, at this point, I was terrified for anybody to find out that I was gay, and I was terrified by anybody making, jokes or things like that. And it's funny because when I released my that video that you saw, and I did, or the BYU song, one of my roommates messaged me, who I love very much and who I hold no ill feelings toward. But one time he like said a slur or something, and he remembered that, and I don't. But he messaged me. He's like, I can't believe how insensitive that was, and it means a lot, the apology. And I've said insensitive things, we all do. But I think I was in that constant state of worrying that I was going to fail and that I was going to be caught and found out. Mm-hmm. And not caught for any actions at this point, just caught for my thoughts, and my web searches occasionally.
That's a relatable space. I know there are people who are listening to this saying, I know exactly what you're talking about. I had that same experience in college as well. In the middle of the night, I just remembered talking with my roommate, and he just out of the blue asked me if I was gay. And I knew exactly what the question he was going, when he said, Kyle, can I ask you a question? I already knew what he wanted to ask me. It was like my heart just sunk.
The spirit was just right there.
I guess it was. But it wasn't that obviously I didn't want to come out, and I didn't want to even be honest with him. But the immediate reaction in my brain was, what did I do to cause him to believe that I was gay?
Yeah.
And so that's what really worried me. It wasn't that he was asking the question, it was what action, because I thought I was covering every base and doing everything as heterosexual as possible, as normal as possible. So I get it, and I think a lot of people who are listening to this episode understand that, who are queer. I also think that could be a great learning experience for those who are not, who listen to this and realize that we did everything that we could do also to pave that over.
Right. Identity is very confusing, and my parents, I wouldn't call them homophobic, but times have changed since when I was a kid, and I didn't really necessarily ever feel empowered to be openly gay, or maybe I wasn't brave enough. I don't know, but it wasn't until about a year into going to school at BYU that I was gonna turn 19, and so I went to my bishop, and I was like, I'm ready to go on my mission. Let's do my mission papers. And he says, he gives me these interviews, and he asks about the gay thing, and I said, yeah, I do have same gender attraction. And he was like, oh, well, then we're gonna need to, you're gonna need to do a little bit more mission prep, and we're gonna have to preach my gospel. And
did he know about that before you disclosed it to him? I ask that only because there's some policy and procedure in the church that they annotate records. If you were guilty of something regarding sexuality, homosexuality, they'll annotate a record. And I wondered if you brought that up to your bishop first, or if he
Well, it
saw
was
that in a record.
certainly in a record that was transferred from previous wards.
And it would come from your home ward to your new college ward.
Yeah.
And it would say that.
I've had a rainbow scarlet letter on my records, I'm sure, since I was 13 or 14.
And a lot of Latter-day Saints aren't familiar with that process.
Interesting.
They don't believe that well, a lot of them just are unaware that that's a process, but it's called Annotation of Record. And so if someone does confess this to a bishop, the bishop is supposed to annotate your record. The original idea behind it was that then you and I could never work with children or youth in the church, and that was the church's way of protecting themselves, as if we're just raging pedophiles. And that was the idea behind that, but it's never been undone. It's still something that continues to haunt. You call it the scarlet.
Right, and the
rainbow.
irony is a lot of the sexual manipulation and assault that happens in the church are by the heterosexual married men. And that's just not even in the church, but it's just in general. Like the statistics are overwhelming that people will assume that queer, trans, gay people are more of a threat from anything from children to going into a bathroom. But in reality, it's not queers.
It's amazing how we
even close.
Create those boogeymen. Religion will create somebody to fear, and then that fear has such a traditional and long-standing experience.
Well, and anything can seem justifiable when you have, power and authority. So I think in this position, so when I was talking to my bishop, I was like, I want to go on a mission. He's like, well, you're going to need to do a little bit more training. And I kind of got discouraged because I would go back every month and say, I've been doing so good. I've been reading my scriptures. I took another seminary class. I've been paying 20% tithing. I've been I had to enroll in therapy, reparative therapy at BYU Idaho campus, where they would do everything from, they would tell me, you need to sign up for a gym class. This reminds me of that acting thing. You need to sign up for a gym class and make sure you get really sweaty with the other guys and go into the locker and get butt naked and take a shower with them and don't get aroused because you're just there with the guy. That was part of the advice that I got from the therapist, was that I need to expose myself as much as possible in these uncomfortable situations, because that honestly, at the time I couldn't think of anything worse to do.
Who invited you to attend therapy?
My bishop, and they paid for it.
So
at first,
was it through LDS Family Services?
it was through BYU Idaho mental health services, or whatever it's called, health services.
So they hooked you up to some therapist who specializes in this?
Mm-hmm. Yep, somebody that he claimed that he'd helped a lot of people, gay and lesbians, go on missions and get married and change.
And this is 2009?
Yeah.
In Rexburg, Idaho. So, and I want to walk through this reparative therapy program. First, you're supposed to, I'm guessing, obtain masculine experiences, find more masculine experiences. That's his first, which is gym, friends, and then stimuli.
Yeah.
What other pieces of advice did they offer?
Maybe consider changing my major, because I was a theater major. Lots of gays there, and I did change my major during that time. Actually, I changed it to social services. I was so completely into this, to the T of what this therapist would tell me to do. Monkey see, monkey do sort of thing. And so I joined a weightlifting class, free weightlifting. I did more seminary. I fasted an additional time a month. I did temple work. I was supposed to do 100 names in the temple before I could go on my mission, was the bishop told me. So I have all of these extra opportunities and tasks that I have to do And 6-7 months into this, meeting with the bishop weekly, going to therapy, doing the classes, doing the reading literature, everything. Changing my major, I'm not in theater and arts this semester because I just don't want it to tempt me or distract me from my mission. And then my bishop just keeps saying,